And welcome everyone! I am the only Russian around, and today we'll dive even deeper in Soviet movie classics and share some amazing stuff I found there. So, today's movie is The Planet of Storms, or Planeta Бурь in Russian.
This movie from 1961, based on a story by Soviet sci-fi writer Alexander Kazantsev. And yes, sci-fi movies were produced in Soviet Union. There were not many, but each of them had significant impact on culture, not only in Soviet Union, but with this one in the whole world.
It was one of the first sci-fi movies made in USSR. It is about an expedition to Venus, and stuff got out of hand pretty quickly. These special effects were cutting edge for Soviet filmmaking. For the first time in a non-documentary movie, people could see such realistic space and other planets. For many Soviet people, it was the first meet-up with on-screen space adventures.
As I said before, there were next to none space-themed movies at the time, so almost everything was made on the go. All practical effects and filming technologies were invented and created on the filming grounds, and despite that it looks very solid in space or on planet's surface. The story is about people handling really desperate situations on Venus, when one of the ships is destroyed and people from the second one are lost on the dangerous planet. It is not much now, but it was beyond sufficient in 60s. And this movie has it all in one. Preparations and space journey, wild alien creatures, robot, volcanic eruption, underwater world, hovercraft car, quite dense action and also a nice character interactions. So, even considering age, it is a really well-made film.
And it has almost none of the usual cheesy feel, like for example in Godzilla from 1954. You kinda understand that this is a man in a rubber suit, but this fact is not making you feel stupid while watching. My guess is because filmmakers respected their audience and realized that they can't make something half-assed.
US bought this movie to distribute in the country. It was called Planet of Storms, Planet Burr, or Planet of Tempests. And it had a real success. And so, it was refilmed by Curtis Harrington as A Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet in 1965, and by Peter Bogdanovich in 1968 as A Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women. And it wasn't just remakes. These two directors filmed their own parts and inserted them in movie, cutting some footage from it in favor of their own material. I'm not quite sure if it was legal or even an honest thing to do. And if they did at least something, but in the first one, they just changed several second-plane actors that done nothing but sitting in rooms and communicating with crew by the radio. And in second one, they inserted some girls in semi-transparent clothes that done nothing except playing around or moving very slowly. They even don't speak, and all their speech is supposed to be telepathic, but it looks more pathetic.
It is sent to us by the god of the fire mountain. He shows us his power. They are stronger than our gods. They are stronger than Terra. Terra is a false god.
Also, it shows some models from NASA projects and bits of original footage in the introduction, but it's not giving movie anything significant except more exposition and gives it a vibe of a documentary. Imagine that in Power Rangers, instead of new characters and storylines, creators just added some random city life footage and couple of scenes in a juice bar.
In fact, I can feel myself in a leather jacket and insert these parts in the original Terminator. It won't make it a new movie, and no, none of these two movies even mentioned original movie or cast involved.
But back to the original movie. What I especially like that there is no serious conflicts between crew members even in dire situations. To be honest, with all modern movies I expected some conspiracy, treachery or screaming at each other scenes. But there is none. All characters act like professionals, like what you expect from astronauts in time of a crisis. Of course they disagree at some points, but figure their differences out really quickly. Telling a story about characters is not automatically means that there must be conflict between characters. I mean, they're on a goddamn Venus and probably will die in a day or so if they won't cooperate and fast. Not much time for accusing each other or find out who is the best leader. Honestly, I always roll my eyes at points when obligatory conflict between characters happens on screen. It's such a cheap trick in my opinion, like reality shows cheap. And by the way, operator of a robot is an American. And he's not an obvious villain as you might expect from Cold War era movie. He's cynical, yes, but always cold-minded and proves himself a real friend on many occasions. Again, I want guys like this movie's crew to fly on Mars, Venus or anywhere else in near future. And another thing, no one dies. Well, except the crew members from spaceship destroyed by an asteroid. It is really unique, I must say, and again proves the crew to be professionals. With all movies I watched before, I tried to calculate who will die first because, well, there is always someone dies in movies like this. It also has a good, delightful ending. Can't say much about remakes, because they did not add anything to general plot or characters. I can say that this is a formidable movie in all aspects, but especially in special effects. When George Lucas came to Russia for the first time, he wanted to see the director of this movie, Pavel Klushantsov, claiming that the Planet of Storms was one of the main inspiration sources for his Star Wars. But he never succeeded, because at that time the director was retired and his whereabouts were unknown to public. And later, in 90s, another person tried to find him, but this time successfully. It was one of the best special effects makers in the world, Robert Skotak, who was writing a book about cinematography and special effects, and Klushantsov gave him all his works, blueprints and other stuff. Rumors say that these works had made into many and many Hollywood blockbusters in one or another form, and Skotak himself praised Klushantsov as one of the best special effects creators in history.
It is fascinating that despite Cold War, iron cutting, language and cultural barriers, stuff like movies still somehow connected people and influenced media culture. And it is a shame that very few people are aware of that. Even I never heard about Planet of Storms before, but I found out that documentary about its director Pavel Klushantsov was made in Denmark, and restored copy of movie was released in Japan. I was really surprised to see that this movie is a cult classic all over the world. And this is it for today's video. See you next time.